Hey, what's up, guys? Happy Hump Day. This is episode 9 of Over the Hump. So, this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about kind of how to get out of a mental rut, sort of in honor of Caitlin's mindset challenge starting today. It's November 1st, so it's the first day of a new month. We got 2 months left of the year, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more. She's doing a positive mindset challenge, which I think is awesome. It's something that we all need to prioritize, probably a lot more often than we do, myself included. And so I wanted to take a little bit of time today on Over the Hump and just talk about like how to get yourself out of a mental rut. And that could be any type of scenario where you've just been entertaining a lot of negative thoughts or a lot of like self-sabotage or a lot of like self-limiting beliefs, and you start to sort of like, we can feel downward spirals accumulate momentum kind of in the same way a lot of times that upward momentum accumulates too. Sometimes when you're in like a flow state and you're just feeling really good and things are going well, you don't even almost always know what you did to get yourself there. But we can start to, be more aware and pay more attention to those states, both up and down. But you can sort of just feel that energy accumulating sometimes in both directions. Particularly on the way down, it can be really frustrating because you don't really know how that cycle got put into motion, or sort of like who pressed the play button on that pattern that sort of started running, and you can feel it start to snowball. And you start to just, as you're in more of a negative state internally, you start to entertain more negative thoughts, and those thoughts spawn and generate more thoughts and actions. And then you kind of just, again, you can sort of like, it's that time frame where, oh, everything's going wrong. And then I spilled my coffee, and then I went to the gym and forgot my headphones because I couldn't find my car keys. And it's just like all the little shit that normally probably wouldn't get to you just kind of keeps accumulating. But that's all happening because that internal state has changed and shifted, and it's that negative belief process that's running in the background. So it's important, I think, to play like kind of offense and defense when you're trying to get yourself out of those situations. So I just wanted to cover a few of the things that I've done in the past and that Caitlin has done in the past and that we've sort of shared with each other back and forth over the years that has helped us to kind of reset our mindset a little bit and just get back into a place, I don't even want to say of just positivity, but at least back to a place of hope. I don't think you can be at bottom and then like do these things and necessarily, I mean, great if you can, but and just be like completely back to the top of the mountain. But you need a turning point. And recently I heard, it was on a reel, in terms of like negative spirals or negative states or even depressions. And it was talking about that bottom is not necessarily when the worst thing happens, right? Like, so whatever has been going on, bottom, like hitting bottom is not necessarily like the worst of it or like when the worst thing happened. Bottom is when you change directions. Bottom is when you just like, I'm fucking had enough of this. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. You hit bottom and you change directions. So it doesn't always match up timeline wise with when the worst event happened. Maybe you lost a loved one, maybe you lost your job, maybe you just whatever, you had a physical injury, got knocked out of a race you wanted to compete in, whatever it is. That may not be bottom for you. You know what I mean? Like maybe 2 months down the road, the ripple effect of how that's changed all the day-to-day actions in your life, that may finally be bottom. But bottom is when you have had enough and you are going to change the narrative of your story. So I want to kind of talk about like how to maybe find a higher bottom so that you can catch yourself if you're in one of those downward spirals, of how to like acknowledge what's happening and say, hey, I've had enough, without letting it continue to just, go down the hill for another month or two, and how to kind of get that process turned around. So I think the first step for me is usually trying to acknowledge what's going on and then detach from it mentally a little bit. So for me, if I'm kind of like recognizing that I'm on like a downward trajectory, or it doesn't always have to be like this accumulative thing, right? You can just have like down days, and that's totally normal too. But if it's definitely something that you feel like is sort of like snowballing, and it's like, hey, this has been kind of like, you're having like ups and downs, but they're sort of like lower highs and lower lows, like the stock market. But anyway, no, but if you're having that type of effect, you can say like, okay, this is something that's I do need to like acknowledge and turn around, but you need to be able to detach from it. And that can just simply like be as easy as saying like, okay, I'm recognizing that like my internal environment is like sad right now, or depressed, or angry, or frustrated, or resentful, or whatever that is for you. But like that's not you, though, that's what you're feeling. So just trying to first acknowledge and identify what the feeling actually is, which is super important, because a lot of times we put these umbrella terms like I'm mad. Maybe you are mad, but like that's probably too general. Like you need to really isolate and sit with whatever that emotion or feeling is long enough that you kind of like sift through the bullshit and figure out where it's coming from and what that emotion actually is, and identify it. And you might even like feel it in a certain part of your body, but you're really trying to just most accurately like kind of go through all of the why questions. Why am I feeling this way? Maybe it's at a person. Why is that person triggering this emotion in me? Is it something they did? Is it something I did? Is it something from the past and it's a memory? But like try to figure out what you're feeling, why you're feeling it. Is it an inadequacy, an insecurity? Is it, a self-limiting belief that you've had, that you've always had, that maybe got put onto you by a parent or loved one or somebody else earlier in your life that you sort of adopted? Like you may have to peel back the layers for a while, but figure out what you are feeling and then detach from it. That isn't you. Like that is not you. That is something that you are feeling and something you're experiencing, but it's not actually you. All right, we moved locations. But we kind of have to go through that like why questioning series sometimes to figure out like where the feeling that we're feeling is actually coming from. Like if you were training for a bodybuilding competition or a marathon or some upcoming like event, and you got an injury, and so that's, like there's a lot of different feelings there. Like one, you're frustrated because you're like in physical discomfort. Two, you're not really able to do that thing that you wanted to do. And you kind of have to even question sometimes like, okay, well, is my feeling proportionate to the level of like change, or proportionate to the level of like distress that this is going to cause me? A lot of times it's not. Like we get knocked out of our track, like the trajectory that we think we're going to be on, and it really just derails us. And a lot of times when we go through that questioning series of why, maybe it was a promotion at work that we didn't get, whatever it is, we didn't hit this milestone in life that we thought we were supposed to hit, and it just kind of derails us. And a lot of times that's because we've now attached like our identity in this thing that we were wanting to accomplish, or in a certain placing, or in a certain status, or something along those lines. And we've kind of like attached who we are with that thing, or we've made ourselves believe that once we get that thing, or once we do that thing, that then we're going to feel happy, then we're going to feel the way we want to feel, we'll feel fulfilled. Maybe it's like even like a trip that you want to take or whatever. But it's kind of about stepping back and recognizing that like all throughout life you're going to have like things that you succeed in and things that you just don't succeed in, and neither one of those should really like change the way you feel about you. Like sometimes it's not even in our control, sometimes it is. And it's not that at all that you should stop trying to improve yourself and make yourself better, but it's about not being so wrapped up and attached in the outcome of those like journeys that we sort of set out on, and more being in it for like the process, or for the opportunity to improve or learn something new about ourselves or discover something different, but not getting so wrapped up and attached into that outcome that we think we're supposed to get. Again, like if you go back to like Buddhism philosophy, suffering is just the state of wanting things to be other than they are. So just recognizing that, again, it is really more about the process and embracing that process and that journey anyway than it is more about the outcome. So that can just be kind of like super helpful to remind yourself that when things don't go as planned or when you don't succeed, like you shouldn't be too wrapped up in the positive or negative outcome, and you shouldn't be too attached either way. If you are, that's a huge opportunity for improvement, because life is going to continue to give you accomplishments and like anti-accomplishments or whatever you want to call it, like things that you kick ass in, things that you fail in. Like that's just the reality. But you can't attach yourself to those things. If you're riding the highs off of your accomplishments, like that won't continue forever. Like it's just not going to. And you are not those things any more than you are the things that you don't succeed. But you are the ultimately like that effort or that process in doing those things. So that's the thing that we need to learn to fall in love with. But more kind of back to how we get out of a negative headspace. So the first step, and you can kind of go at this either way. There's like offense and defense. I don't think that one is necessarily essential to start with. But on a defense front, you've got to start looking at the negative thought processes or the negative thoughts that are coming into your mind. So, I mean, your internal environment is your home. It's also completely under your control. Your external environment, not so much. We can only control so many things. But your internal environment and your perception and your thoughts and the way you are perceiving the world, like that is more up to you than anything else, right? So you do have to like think about the things that you're letting into your house. Like we all have negative thoughts about ourselves, about others, about things that we've done in the past. And you've got to watch, especially because I'm all about reflection and kind of like self-analysis and auditing the way we spend our time and deciding whether or not we should continue doing things or whether it's time to leave an old framework or habit or pattern behind that's just no longer serving us. So I'm not saying don't think about those things, but when you're in a negative headspace, you do not need to kind of really limit the negative self-thought that is coming into your head. So I would just really encourage you to like start being more aware of your thoughts, because that's kind of that first step, right? Like you at least need to be acknowledging what you're thinking about. And when you start to think about what you're thinking about, the things you think about will start to change. And you need to, why am I having that negative thought? Like every time a negative thought comes in, don't dismiss it, but like dig in a little bit. Like, why do I think that? Is that rational? Like, would I think that about someone else? If you're typically, that's the easiest one for me. If I'm thinking a negative thought about myself, or if I think someone else is thinking a negative thought about me, just asking myself, would I think that about them? Or like, would I think that about another person? Like we treat ourselves typically just terribly compared to how we would treat other people. And even if you would just start treating yourself like you would anybody else, or if like somebody came to you, if like your friend came to you and they told you they were thinking that, what would you say to them? And then like say that to yourself. Like, so just acknowledging that negative thought, not dismissing it, but not attaching to it either. You need to like definitely not attach to it. Again, that thought is not you. It's something that's coming into your house. You need to decide what to do with it. But then like really like kind of like being there in a way to support yourself or dig into that and figure out like, why is that even like, why is that coming in? Like, that's not rational. And then work on re-shifting that framework. So like, again, I think it's good to be able to acknowledge the negative thoughts that are coming in, detach from it, and then basically like replant a positive thought every time a negative one comes in. The type of positive thought that you like replant is totally up to you. I would encourage you to have it be either something of gratitude. Like one of my affirmations is just that I'm thankful for this opportunity. Like again, like just kind of looking at your life, most of us have an amazing opportunity. Like if you're the type of person that's watching this video on a phone on Instagram, like you're doing pretty great. And so just kind of being thankful for a lot of those things that you have in your life that we probably take for granted on a day-to-day basis. So something of gratitude or something of opportunity or even ownership. Like mine was, I am responsible for my own happiness. I find a lot of like power in a good way in reminding myself that like I am responsible for my like internal environment, my happiness, the way I'm perceiving the world. Like No one else gets to do that for you. And that's kind of like some people look at that as a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. A lot of people are wanting someone else to just like make them happy, or something else to make them happy, and like that's just not the way it works. Like, you have to do that, but because you have to be the one to do it, you're the one that gets to do it. Like, it's on you in a good way. Like, no one else nothing else is required but you to be like, to start making yourself happier. So for me, that's very empowering to just kind of like remind myself that like, hey, if I'm not having a great day, or if I'm kind of in a funk, like, hey, I'm responsible for it. I can get myself out of this whenever I'm ready to. Whenever I'm ready to stop being miserable, I need to pull myself out of this, and then I can start being positive just as easy as I can start being negative. And then you can start to rebalance and start that upward trajectory. But that's on you. It's on you to make that happen. So that's kind of the defense, right? We're going to acknowledge the negative thought. We're going to be more aware of what we're thinking. We're going to not attach to it and not totally dismiss it either. Try to figure out where it's coming from, and then replant that with a positive thought or affirmation about something that is optimistic or something that has to do with gratitude. From an offense side of things, everybody's different on this, but I'll share a couple of mine. Things that just distract you, and to me are like light and fun and usually involve connecting with people, are the things that like help to bring me out of a funk. So just like, especially being outside, like for me, going to meet up with a friend and going on a hike, or going to grab dinner, or going to just like meet up with somebody and have a meaningful conversation. And you kind of like know what you need in a way, but don't feed too much into that, because it's like, I think we know it's kind of like your hunger hormones, right? Like all these people that are just like, oh, you should just follow your hunger hormones. Well, it works really great if you're in like a healthy state. If you're not in a healthy state, don't do that, because that's going to go terribly wrong. But when you're in a negative head state, a lot of times we're like, yeah, I don't want to hang out with anybody. But like, would me in a positive state say that? Like, think of the things that you know when you're in a positive state that you're kind of like drawn to do, and I would more seek those things out. So for me, connecting with other people, being outside, doing things that are just not serious, like not really like accomplished based, like things that I'm not trying to like work towards anything. Like, I like just going out and playing pool, because that's just kind of a mindless fun activity for me, and usually I'm doing that with somebody. But things like that where it's like there's no like attached value, or like a lot of us too who are like more like entrepreneur mindset, and like you're working all the time, you think you have to always be accomplishing something, and that is not always a good mindset to be in. Sometimes you need to learn how to have fun just for the sake of having fun, and learn to detach from constantly being productive. So everybody's a little bit different on that, but those are some of the things that work for me. But do some things that pull you physically, not just mentally, out of that state and start to distract you. A great workout can do that. A great walk, hike, conversation, a book might pull you out of that, because it's a good positive mental distraction. I would really encourage you to not maybe just like scroll Instagram or get on YouTube or something. That's probably not going to help. Although maybe if you're watching like a motivational video or something, if that's your thing, then that's fine too. But those are the things that I would kind of look at from how to play some defense on the negative thought patterns that are coming in, how to do some positive things to kind of like pull yourself out of that, and then just start accumulating little wins. You typically, for whatever the scenario was that created the downward or negative feelings in the first place, it's good to start getting some little wins in that category. So like, small steps, but like pick some things, do some goal setting things that like, I don't want to say you're like kind of setting the bar low, but if you feel like you need to get some momentum back up that are like relatively achievable, that you can do it. And then like the more you're starting to accomplish again in that particular category, maybe the bigger bars that you set, or the bigger steps that you start to take again, until you're back to your kind of prior level. But you need to set some just like easy wins for yourself to just start getting back in that habit of positive thinking, of accomplishing the things that you're setting for yourself, and of proving to yourself that you are not those negative thoughts. So hopefully this was helpful, a little bit of a different spin on it this Wednesday, but hope everybody enjoyed this video, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks.